So it is a rather warm and sunny Thursday evening in London town. So figured it's date night, so I'd come out with Mr. Mark Newbold and we're going to see a film. It's been out for a while, but neither of us, well, at least I haven't seen it anyway. It's called Star Wars. And it was being shown at the BFI National Theatre, and it was the original 35mm 1977 release. So this isn't a special edition, it's not a laser disc scan, nothing like that. This was the original print that was shown in the cinema here in the UK almost 50 years ago. I mean, I literally cannot describe how this was. Mark, help me out here, mate. How was it? I mean, because have you seen this version, haven't you?
Yeah, so I would have seen this in sort of early March of 78 when it got out to the provinces. So I would have seen it when I was 6 with my dad. We walked in pretty much halfway through the film, because we were late. So we walked in at the the cantina scene, Hangredo scene. It's the very first thing I saw. So I didn't get that Star Destroyer moment. Certainly got it tonight. Wow. I'm buzzing. Just the differences. I think that's the thing that really strikes you, is the little differences that you don't realise are kind of there.
Yes.
You get so used to seeing that special edition version.
Yeah, you do. Or even like, because there's been other changes since the special edition.
Yeah.
And also like kind of little tweaks and stuff in the audio mix to like on VHS and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, but I kind of had to almost try and switch my brain off and go, I haven't seen this before.
Yes.
This is all new.
Yeah.
And I mean, so basically the print was, so it was a Technicolor dye print, which is, as you'll probably find out in a minute or two, listeners, there was an introduction which they kind of explained a little bit about this. This is literally, as far as the BFI knows, is the only one in existence. It's in the BFI archives, and it's a superior quality print to the Eastman prints that they would have got in the US. And if you've ever watched those behind-the-scenes special edition documentaries, and they talk about how the quality was bad of the prints, and they had to do a lot of restoration, and the print was very magenta looking. Well, the Technicolor print maintains its colour, so it meant that what we saw was as close as you could get to going back to 1977. Now, I say that because ultimately the projector and the screen and the sound system would have been a lot better today in the National Theatre than it would have ever been in a cinema back in 50 years ago, really, let's be fair. And so you have to put that into perspective. However, you just notice, I mean, the moment the film starts, you get the very old BFI rating, which was a U. It was a U, wasn't it?
It was a U, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that was just cruddy and scratched, and the gate weave on that was crazy, and that was because it was just the first thing that really anybody touched, so that would have been closer to the elements and would have more scratches on it. And there were other scenes and some of the optical effects and that, those scenes definitely looked a lot softer and a lot more dirtier than they were than what we're used to. But overall, I was actually really impressed. I thought generally the effects and the composites were going to be a lot worse than that.
Oh, yeah. It was a lot cleaner than I remember.
Yeah.
Or rather expecting it to be.
Yeah, I mean, because you watch the special edition like documentaries and they talk about, I had all these heavy matte lines, and yes, there were matte lines around, say like the remote ball, but there weren't those crazy white boxes you'd get around TIE fighters and stuff. Like if you've ever seen the original Battlestar Galactica, you can watch the white matte boxes floating around the screen, around the Vipers and stuff. This didn't have any of that. I mean, it was interesting just to see actually, and kind of almost weigh up what was an improvement in the special edition as opposed to what we saw originally. Don't you think?
Yeah, I think they cleaned up the print. They definitely did a restoration on the print. to bring it up a bit. I know that's a bugbear for you because of some things they did, especially on Empire. But it made you realise how largely unnecessary a lot of those additions were.
Yeah.
You know, the Jabba scene was not missed.
No, it's because, I mean, I've always said, haven't I, that the Jabba scene is basically redundant because it's basically just repeating what Greedo says. I think the biggest round of applause was Greedo getting shot by Han.
Han and Greedo scene definitely got the biggest pop, without a doubt.
Yeah, and I mean, I have to say, I think probably out of all of them, the most justified change was probably definitely that Mos Eisley drive-through, because that, out of all the effects, I can completely understand where Lucas was coming from.
You know all about the Vaseline, but actually the mirrors underneath the landspeeder look better than you remember.
Yeah.
Like on the sand.
Yeah, when they're looking for R2, you kind of go, that's all right. Yeah. And actually, kind of like, it kind of works. I mean, the biggest thing that I noticed also was the sound. I mean, I could go all into like how there was loads of different colour inconsistencies, and some of that might be down to the print, some of that might be just down to the colour time of the day, and a number of different things. But the sound definitely was one of those things you definitely take for granted now. Like when Vader's choking like Motti, there's no bass. No. Like you just can't hear like the Force in the same way as you do now.
You're so used to hearing that now, aren't you?
Yeah, that rumble and obviously stuff like Alderaan and the Death Star getting blown out.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always felt like the Death Star blown up was a bit overdone, and actually the original was kind of better.
I prefer the original.
Yeah, but the Alderaan one, because it was kind of like there's a cut in it, it kind of does look a bit clunky.
You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
I got Fantha.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file.
That doesn't sound too hard.
Boom! This is Making Tracks.
This is the way.
Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
I know these people. They are brutal. Does this look Jedi to you?
That's not how the Force works.
They'll never see it coming.
Count me in.
Misa back.
So we're back in the studio a couple of days later, so we had a bit of time to sit down and digest what we saw and also actually what's been floating around online, which has been quite an interesting mixed bag of people's opinions. There's actually like some people kind of go, so what, I've got the 4K 77 illegal whatever and what have you, and obviously there's a certain portion of fans who are like, oh, we didn't get to see that's no fair. However, we have. I know for a fact that I rambled and babbled a lot on Thursday and didn't give you much chance to talk. So, Mark, a couple of days out. So what's your thoughts about actually what we saw on Thursday?
When I came out of it, I was quite emotional. You were excited. That's why you were talking so much. You were excited. And also, I was minding the traffic for you because you nearly got run over by a taxi. But apart from that, no, it was weird. I came out and speaking to Matt and Brian as well, who saw it on the screening after us, I think the four of us kind of agreed it was quite a privilege to be in that room.
I think so.
I mean, it was a film festival. It wasn't a Star Wars crowd, so it was a part of a film festival, which is, I think, important to point out because the reactions that it got, which you mentioned when we recorded on Thursday, the reactions for the Han and Greedo scene, the humour that gets picked up, it's memes to some people. A lot of hello there and all these little things that we take for granted, and they get ripped up and ribbed on all the time in our sort of circle of what we do and what we listen to. But to people outside the bubble, a lot of these things hit really well.
It played really well. There's a lot of, in fact, there was comedic moments that I've never really thought about as comedic moments. I think on one level, some people were viewing this through the lens of 2025, looking at something that's 50 years old and kind of looking at it and kind of going, oh, it's a little bit twee. And I think, was it? Well, I think
Telegraph. The Telegraph were the ones that really went into it.
There was a film critic in the Telegraph who really ripped into it. Again, he was looking at the technical issues, which I think were predominantly because of the age of the print. And that was probably, for me as a industry professional, that was one of the most interesting things. Is actually one of the things I get asked to do all the time is, can you make this new footage look old? Can you degrade it and stuff like that? And you can buy plugins and just stick it on and stuff. And you kind of, you kind of go through what's cool and stuff. However, having the actual chance to watch something on a screen that is 50 years old and has probably by all rights been as well preserved as anything you're ever likely to find, it was quite an interesting exercise for me on that one level. And there was some stuff from that. I mean, like, I think the audio was probably the one thing that suffered the most because it wasn't mono. So we obviously had a stereo mix, but I think the right channel was having issues because it kept on jumping just to the left and stuff, or like the right would be kind of like quite low down. And so that was a bit disorientating, but it was still there. So it wasn't like there was any points where you couldn't understand what was going on. What would be interesting would be to go back. I'd love to see a restoration of this without redoing anything, literally just trying to work on that scan, because I'm really curious just to see how some of those transitions, the in and out of the transitions where you had the wipes and stuff, they did look really quite soft and stuff, which makes sense. What you're basically doing is when you're doing an optical transition like that, you basically blend them into negatives. So you're going down an extra generation, and it's always going to be based on the quality of the equipment that you have at the time. So if you've got not great equipment because it's 50 years old, and then the film stock is being run through it, it's going to look a little bit shonky. But generally, it was a Star Wars film.
Hi, it's Tom Wilton, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
Now we've got the 50th coming up, and Kathleen Kennedy on stage mentioned 2027 and celebration, and we've got some amazing things coming. I just wonder, given that the BFI print, the UK Technicolor print, hasn't degraded, it's a better quality print than the Eastman Kodak stuff that they had in the States. I just wonder whether they struck a deal and said, look, we'll let you screen this at the BFI Film Festival, but we'd really like to have a copy of that and do something with it for the 50th anniversary, because I think if that got a wide release as is, with hairs in the gate and scratches and audio issues and all the stuff that we had, which didn't bother me, because any two people who recorded that on the television in October 1982 on different types of video recorders with a brand new cassette or one that you've recorded 6 or 7 times would have different quality versions of Star Wars. So everyone's is unique anyway to a degree.
Absolutely.
You know, and so if this went out to the wider world, you'd hear more people grumbling like that from the Telegraph, who just came across as mean-spirited. Whereas some people who picked up on technical issues, and some people picked up on just the pacing of the film because it's a 50-year-old film. Yeah. I get to us that Star Wars: A New Hope, as it became, of course, but that episode 4 is as integral, is as vital, as important a part of Star Wars as anything that's come since. I mean, especially right now, coming off the back of Andor Season 2, because fresh eyes on Rogue One gets back into the top 10 of the, totally. Online of movies and such, and getting crazy minutes there. And next, it's Star Wars. Star Wars, that film we saw, 48 years old, scratchy, wobbly, what the hell ever. It wasn't that was either an issue or a benefit or anything else. To me, it was the reaction it got in the room. I just loved the reaction, just the buzz in the room. The fact that Kathleen Kennedy seemed excited that there was this print out there, that she was like, that was such a good print. I didn't expect it to be such a good print.
I suppose on one hand, now you can kind of take that step back, and we've had the prequels, and then you run into the modern films, you run into Solo, then you run into Andor Season 1, Season 2, and then Rogue One, which will be 10 years old next year. You can totally understand. You jump right back and kind of go, well, that film now, to make the whole thing work, that trilogy needs to hold up. Yes. It needs to stand up kind of in comparison, because you do want new viewers who are coming into it just sit down and watch it. When we saw the videos back in 97 of like Lowry doing the restoration map, we're like, okay, that's interesting, that's cool. But I don't think anybody could comprehend, unless you'd seen a print, how it was going to look. And I mean, my God, they did such a good job compared to what we saw. And obviously this print that we saw is older than the ones they used to do a special edition. I don't actually know what they scanned. I've got a feeling they actually scanned original negs, didn't they?
I believe so. From memory, it was first generation scan.
Yeah, so that's as good as you're going to get.
Yeah.
So,
but you make a great point, though. You make a really good point that for us, almost as an archaeological process, to see Star Wars in the way we saw that original version, I was going to say palate cleanse. That's not the right phrase, but do you know what I mean? It was like you were just watching Star Wars. You weren't thinking about Empire. You weren't thinking about Jedi or nothing that's come since. You were just watching that. And so to have a version of that cleaned up would make it more palatable to a modern audience, because if a kid who's just getting into Star Wars is watching Andor or watching Rogue One or watching anything else that's come out in the last, let's say, 10 years, and then they see that, because God knows there's loads of kids who've watched loads of Star Wars and just haven't bothered with A New Hope. Just haven't bothered with it. It's not their Star Wars. And if they saw what we saw the other day, they would be like, why are we watching this kooky Flash Gordon crap? They wouldn't get it. No. But if you, like you say, you clean it up or re-special edition the special edition and bring the visual effects right up to today and did something like that for the 50th, I'd be more than happy with that. You can lose the Jabba scene. I'm not fussed about that. But everything else, leave it in and that would work.
Yes, for Jabba scene, I think is the redundant scene. Clean it up and we're going to release a Star Wars 50th edition 77 print. Strip it all back and go, right, this is it. So this is it cleaned up and pristine, as good as we can get it. But to George's, I guess, intentions, if at any point he, in 77, he wanted to ever replace Jabba the Hutt with, a big slug, or if that was just one of those things that actually he came back to it when he got to Return of the Jedi and decided to have a rethink, so like it's like a retcon on his original concept. And that would probably appeal to a portion of the fans. And I think it's the fans who saw the special edition in 97, because you think like anybody who was kind of born after then, they probably won't have seen until somebody's kind of given them like a hooky copy of like how many's like despecialized or the 4K 77.
Yeah, maybe then, because we've got Starfighter coming out on the 27th. So that's the big celebration for Star Wars 50th Starfighter. So I just wonder maybe not a cinematic release for A New Hope, but maybe a home video. Maybe that's the route to go with the documentary to delve into the history.
Yeah,
Lauren Bougereau's just done a beautiful Jaws 50th documentary, and maybe get him back in the fold and do something.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you do, like they did when they released the original trilogy on DVD and they had the Laserdisc theatrical version on there, which was kind of like the closest we kind of got officially. Yeah. Whether or not they, they give you a nice kind of executor type kind of box set, big steel tin type thing, 50th anniversary logos all over it.
Can you imagine?
£300 or £400, the last Blu-ray set cost me £350 or something, if memory serves correctly. You've got your saga and you've got all that, and then actually, that's just it's a bonus edition, and it's whether or not Lucasfilm or Disney or whoever needs to kind of go, well, actually, is it financially viable? How much is it going to cost us to scan it in? It's going to be quite an expensive undertaking, depending on what they want to do with it. It's whether or not they see it as financially viable, or maybe if it's, could it just be a goodwill gesture? And then the other question, would you need to get George's okay on it? Should you get George's okay on it? Maybe he's mellowed a little bit since he's kind of stepped away from the company. Maybe he'd be slightly less precious. Maybe he'd be more open to that now than he ever was before.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds, bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
In addition to the screening of Star Wars at the BFI, there was also the Influences Talk. It was hosted by Jamie Benning of the Filmumentaries podcast, fellow ILM writer. Sitting in was Paul Collard, Vice President of Film and Digital Services at Deluxe Media, and Douglas Weir from the BFI to talk all about the dye colour process and how it was all brought together.
Dye transfer is a very interesting process. As a person that works in the field that I do, dye transfer prints are kind of prized for their unique quality and that they're susceptible to not fade. So if I'm looking for a reference for colour when we're grading a film when it's being restored, if you have a dye transfer print, it's a great thing to have, because you've got the original colours sitting there and they haven't faded, and you can use that as your reference to restore the colour in a film. And it's a slightly complicated process, but I'm hoping Paul will help us understand it together. About how it works and how it's different.
I don't know how this slide works. I'll try and simply
This is just a pretty picture. Don't read it. It's fine.
Yeah. The picture's there too.
But just to start Paul off, there are prints of Star Wars that we could put on an NFT one that would be unwatchable because they would have completely faded and gone pink. But then the print of Star Wars that you're going to see hasn't faded. It hasn't gone pink. I've seen it. It's in very good condition. It sounds really great, and there's a reason why that is.
Yeah, when Eastman Colour came in, the dyes in the film were produced by a chemical reaction between some colour couplers, which were in each of the emulsion layers, cyan, magenta and yellow layers, an oxidised developer, which was byproduct of a black and white process. and color couplers and the oxidizer developer combined together to form these dies. So that was a brilliant step forward, but the dies did not have the permanence that dies that Technicolor had. Technicolor was a printing process. It wasn't a photographic process. So they had in fact, the dies, interestingly enough, were, I think, proprietary to Technicolor. Even although Kodak made the special films that they used, Technicolor provided the dies, and the dies were excellent. As 50 years on, they've proven to be. So the way it worked was that the master film was split into 3 components: a red record, a green record, and a blue record, and then what we call matrix masters were made from these on special film that Kodak made for this process. And where the film was exposed, the matrix film was exposed, it was hardened, and a tanning developer was used, which effectively created a relief image in the film, and then the remaining emulsion that wasn't exposed was washed off. So you ended up with a printing plate, literally, for every single frame of the film. And then those matrix masters would be sprayed in these huge chambers, and I had the great privilege of actually going to the Technicolor plant in West Drayton and seeing a Technicolor printing line actually working. And there were these huge sort of cabinets with cyan, magenta and yellow dyes being sprayed onto the film. The film absorbed the dyes and then was pressed in contact with a blank, which again Kodak made. And the blank was a black and white film, print film, on which previously had been printed the soundtrack. So the sound is silver, and therefore it's perfectly preserved, because silver is so good at preservation, rather like black and white prints. So the soundtrack was on there, and frame lines were on there, and this blank film then was pressed in contact with the in perfect registration with each of the 3 matrix masters, cyan, magenta, and yellow. And then they went through a drying process, and then the print was ready to go out. And it was a high-speed process, so they could do hundreds of prints, but it was extremely expensive to set up. And that's where Eastman Color won out, because you could make a few prints very cost-effectively in Eastman Color, but Technicolor was only economically viable if you needed to do at least 500 prints.
Firstly, thank you so much, because I reached out to you when we were exploring. Everyone here was so excited about the opportunity to show this print, but we really weren't sure we would be able to. So indebted to you, and everyone in the room is indebted to you tonight as well. I did want to start with the elephant in the room around the print. It has become so scarce. How does this version, to start with this version before we talk about the film itself, but how does this version sort of exist as sort of folklore within Lucasfilm now?
Oh, it's incredible folklore. I have to say that even when I came into the company, there was endless conversation about where everything was and what was, in fact, the first print. And it's quite remarkable. What you're going to see is, in fact, the first print, and I'm not even sure there's another one quite like it.
Yeah.
You know, it's that rare. There's so much tinkering that's gone on over the years, and things that George decided, I'm going to change this, I'm going to try that, and then everybody kind of lost track of what it was. Although I understand, Edgar, are you in here?
Yeah, he's here.
Because your brother is in here, and I understand you may know far more than I do.
I don't want to intro the film.
Listen, I feel we could get more value out of this room tonight, but we don't have time. We have to screen it again after this. That just adds to the special nature of this evening.
It is. It's quite remarkable to be able to experience this exactly the way it was in 1977. This is really special. Really special.
And then in terms of the film itself, I mean, the universe of Star Wars now has become so expanded, and I do want to say Andor has been fantastic. Such a fan of Andor. And sort of thinking about how the world has expanded now, I also wondered within, as you bring filmmakers into Lucasfilm to think about making films that add to the Star Wars universe, does the film, not the print, but the film itself, does it exist as the sort of the stone tablet? Do filmmakers go back to it?
No, I would say that this is the film that everyone starts with. When we start talking about story, we start talking about George's intent, what it is we're trying to build off of. It is the gold standard. There's no question.
And we'll definitely really experience. I watched about 5 minutes of this print when we were researching for it, and it is interesting how far back in time it takes you, and you really experience the joy of the sets and the practical effects, where you can enjoyably see the edges of some of them as well, enjoyably experience the edges. It revolutionised filmmaking at the time. It revolutionised effects. I wondered what excited you now about the future of cinema and the future of...
Well, I think what George created with ILM, and we did a really wonderful documentary, if you haven't been able to see it, in 6-part series on the beginning of ILM. And it really does capture what was so unique about George's vision with where cinema could go. And that's something that we try to carry on in every single thing we do. I mean, it's a constant conversation. Innovation is something that we know keeps pushing cinema forward. And it's all based on the past, but we're constantly trying to reinvent the future. So,
but still feeling a love for some of the practical effects
constantly.
as well.
It's because I think for many of us that kind of came up through what Stephen and George and many of the pioneers of special effects did, it has everything to do with recognizing what's familiar in what you do. So to just make it completely artificial, it loses its soul. And you have to maintain what is real and then build off of that.
And Star Wars is 50.
Star Wars is 50.
2 years.
Unbelievable. It's just going to be unbelievable.
That is crazy. So
we're already talking about what that celebration is going to be.
Yeah, I'm sure that's quite a plan. What can you tell us now about the future of Star Wars? What's coming up in the next years? And if you want to tell us anything extra special, that would obviously be great. But it's up to you. What can we look forward to? And what excites you about Star Wars at 50?
Well, what excites me now is, certainly with the success of Andor, which has really been a 10-year journey, beginning with Rogue One and then building off of that in the series that Tony Gilroy created, has really expanded genres that we can look at and feel that we can tell stories in a galaxy far, far away with many, many different genres. And Jon Favreau, working with Mandalorian, is very different from what Tony was doing with Andor, and that explores the genre of Westerns. And that's what George did. He was constantly looking at film and the way stories build off of genre. And I really think that now we're in a position where it broadens the possibilities of stories and filmmakers that we can bring in to tell stories that mean something to them. It doesn't necessarily have to connect to every little thing that's been done in Star Wars. Yeah. It can actually be a standalone story, like an Andor, like a Rogue One, that then builds into many, many more stories.
So we've got Mandalorian and Grogu next summer?
Yes, next summer. And then we have Sean Levy, who's here prepping right now with Starfighter. So that begins shooting in September, which is one of the reasons I'm here.
Yeah.
And we're very excited about that with Ryan Gosling. And we're just putting together the cast. It's going to be pretty great.
Yeah, great. Anything else you want to tell us about?
No, I'm not going to tell you anything. I'm going to tell you it is Star Wars.
Oh, it's Star. Okay, breaking news. Okay. Can I just say thank you again for allowing us to do this evening?
Welcome.
Can we please give the biggest round of applause? Thank you so much. Okay, enjoy the film, everybody.
Hello, I'm Dennis Lawson, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
It's Matt here with Brian from Fantha Tracks, and Phil and
Alex. From Future of the Force.
From Future of the Force.
And Kids Call It.
So we've just watched the original 77 British print of A New Hope. What do you think, guys?
Wow, what an absolute treat. An absolute treat. After all these years, the colour is phenomenal. The soundtrack is still phenomenal. And Han shot first, once again, for the first time in decades.
Yeah, it was kind of strange. The amount that was different from what we're used to. More so than I anticipated as well.
Yeah, some of the music and some of the scenes felt so empty without like a bit more music and a bit more audio.
Yeah, it was also quite nice to see what was actually originally intended, like with the is it the bar scene where all the CGI extras had to do?
Yeah, none of the extras.
None of that's there.
It's very simple, beautiful, an absolute beauty. The building blocks of everything we know and love about Star Wars is all there. Such a weird thing, seeing such an early print.
Yeah, I mean, it rolled it right back to basics and brought it back to where we started.
No, A New Hope.
Yeah.
No. And having seen the original cut now in all its glory, I can appreciate why George wanted to make some of the changes that he made.
Oh, completely, yeah.
I think they were justified.
Kept seeing Dave Prout's eyes, didn't we, through his mask?
Yes, yeah.
That was a few times.
Yeah. And despite my best efforts, I still miss the Falcon blasting out almost actually.
Yeah.
That's one thing in 97 that I do absolutely adore, and I still miss it right now.
I still love that piece, yeah. Weird seeing no scenes with Biggs.
Yeah.
Because that was added in on Yavin to us, so there was no relationship with Biggs there.
Yeah.
And lots of other bits, but yeah, lovely to see such an original print. Yes, it was a bit grainy in places. When he has the all bar, I think the picture went a bit squiffy in places. But that didn't detract, that added to the beauty of it to me.
I was really impressed with the print, to be fair. The colours of it really popped.
Well, they were saying it was because it was a British print from Technicolor, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Not the American.
It was one of the last prints of Technicolor, and it's held up so well after all these years.
Yeah. So would you watch it again?
Absolutely.
Without a doubt. It's like being reunited with an old friend, and it's a chance to meet up with some old friends as well, so it's phenomenal.
Yeah, a real treat to see that.
Indeed.
I don't think from what was hinted at they're going to screen it very often.
No.
Probably another 30 years.
No, I'd hope another 2.
That'd be nice.
I'd love to see another 2.
For the 50th anniversary, that'll be...
we did the second screening, and Mark did the first screening, and we were told that Kathleen Kennedy was here for the first screening. I hope she stayed and watched it, because I don't think even she's seen that print.
No.
So we'll wait and see. And we were told she'd gone back to Pinewood, wasn't he, to work on Starfighter.
Yeah, indeed, yeah.
That's the next film that's going into production. So are you looking forward to the other stuff coming out with Mando Grogu?
Bring it on. After Andor, I'm ready for everything.
You liked Andor, did you?
I absolutely adored Andor. We gave it 5 stars now.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, just exquisite. Right,
tonight wasn't a bad end to the Andor trilogy, was it?
That's true. Yeah, definitely a good end to the Andor trilogy. All of that Andor culminated in what we saw tonight.
Made it all worthwhile.
Yeah. All right, so good to see you guys. Where can we find you online, Phil?
I'm here on futuretheforce.com, and you can also find me on all social media.
I'm on you'vegotit.com and also Kids Cool It as well for some of our other reviews.
Awesome sauce. Thanks, guys.
And I'm on OnlyFans.
Well, I tell you what, it's been quite a week, really, hasn't it? A couple of weeks, and more and all that.
It's been good for us.
Yes, we have been spoiled, left, right and centre. Yeah, can't complain. The world of Star Wars and Fantha Tracks is a good place to be right now. A huge thanks to everybody at the BFI and the National Theatre, because they gave us access, me and Brian, earlier in the day. Very accommodating, and also just the fact that we managed to get tickets was just a stroke of luck, because it was a ballot. Definitely not any given that we were going to get there. So thank our lucky stars. I think we have talked at one point or another about doing reaction chat for the the films, and this is literally the first Star Wars film, so we can tick that one off of the list. But if you're new to the show and you want to send in some thoughts or theories or comments, if you were in the theatre as well and you heard me and Mark clapping and whooping and laughing and crying, then I apologise, but please send them in and Mark can tell you how you can do it.
Yes, I can, and this is how you can do that.
Email radio@fanthatracks.com. Head to links.fanthatracks.com for links to our social media feeds, Fantha Tracks TV and Fantha Tracks Radio. Thanks to James Semple for the Fantha Tracks intro, Blues Harvest for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. New episodes drop Tuesdays and Fridays at 7 o'clock UK time. Our weekly news show Good Morning Tatooine goes live Sundays at 9 o'clock UK time on Facebook and YouTube. And remember, Fantha Tracks is absolutely free, so it costs nothing to stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news.
And that's me done for this episode, Mark.
And that's you done for this episode. And that's me done for this episode. So I will catch you very soon. But until next time, stay safe, take care, and as always, may the Force be with you.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's another episode of Making Tracks.